They'll be calling him the Count pretty soon.
You're very taken with his counting, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yes. Hardly a duke can do that, what he does.
Say, can I check something with you?
You can check anything with me if I get a check.
Well, I mean by this.
What?
There's a book out about Thalberg, whom I know was very important in your career.
It's not in the Congressional Library in Washington.
No. But I've heard you speak very warmly of Thalberg.
Well, I think he was the greatest producer that Hollywood ever produced.
Irving Thalberg.
Yeah. He died at 37. All geniuses die young. Gershwin died at 37. I was going to die at 37, but I couldn't. Well, that's true about Gershwin and Thalberg.
What changed your mind for you?
I don't know. You look lousy at 37. You look better when you get older. These people have sympathy for you.
Is that incident true about Thalberg and you
Yes.
and your brothers?
He was rather an arrogant man. Arrogant isn't really quite the word, but he was a very serious man and a tremendously hard worker. And he always had 4 pictures going at one time. He was so busy, and I guess he knew he wasn't going to live long, and he wanted to do a lot while he was living. You know, we did Romeo and Juliet and those pictures. Well, I can't remember them, though, but we did 2 pictures with him. Night at the Opera and Day at the Races, and by an odd coincidence, they are by far the best pictures we ever did. And it was a severe loss to him when he died.
Yeah.
And but he had so many writers working for him all the time that it was hard to get to see him. And I remember the first day we come in to see him, we had a call for 10 o'clock in the morning. And we sat there until 5 in the afternoon. We went out for lunch and came back and sat there. And we were humiliated. We've been big stars on Broadway in 3 musical shows, and to sit there and suffer this humiliation. So at 5 o'clock, he wanted to see us, and I said, no. We'll be here tomorrow morning again at 10 o'clock. But if you don't see us by 10:30, we're walking out. Because we're not going to tolerate this kind of treatment. We don't need the movies. We can go back on the stage. So the next morning, we got on to see him, and at 10:30, he left. He was talking to some other writers on other pictures. Well, he did an enormous amount of pictures. And when he went out, Harpo went to the commissary and got some raw potatoes and brought them back. And we put the files, he had letter files. We put those up against the 3 doors of his magnificent office. And then we lit the big fireplace, huge fireplace. We got the fire going. We took off all our clothes. And we sat in front of the fire and toasted these Mickeys, they were called in those days. And later, about 2 hours later, he knocked on the door, and he wanted to come in. And we finally opened the door, and he saw the boys sitting there naked, eating these potatoes. And he never kept us late again after that. Everybody else was afraid of him. Because he had such prestige and power at MGM, but we didn't. We could have gone to vaudeville or back to Broadway or something.
Was he amused by you? Did he make him
Yes,
laugh?
he was amused by that. He liked us because we didn't take anything from him after that, you know. If he said something, I always argued politics with him. He was a hopeless reactionary politically, because I was a Democrat and he was a Republican. As soon as they get rich, they become Republicans. Thalberg was, I don't know if that's still true, but it was in those days. He was a poor boy from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And he went out there and he worked for Carl Laemmle, and he was a genius. And he was an office boy. Before you knew it, he was vice president, and MGM put him in charge of 3/4 of the studio there, and they built a building for him out there.
The Thalberg building.
That's right, took off Garbo's hat.
Yeah.
But he loved us. He loved Chico particularly because he was a fanatical bridge player, and he loved to play bridge in the evening. And he had built a house by the ocean because he loved the ocean. But he had it soundproof so he couldn't hear the waves. That's the truth.
Yes. You've always said that Chico was the most interesting of the brothers. I've heard you say that.
Oh, yes. He had a brilliant mind, Chico. If Chico had gone into mathematics or something, he would have been at someplace in New England, you know, in one of those.
MIT or something.
MIT or one of those. MIT, TIM, MISSI. Don't you remember that song?
I remember something like that.
Mississippi was the name. That's how I learned to spell Mississippi, from hearing that song in vaudeville.
Was Margaret Dumont...
It shows you how times change. I remember years ago, there used to be a theater called the Hammerstein's Theater in Times Square. This was around 40 years ago. And there was an act on the bill. I forget the name of the act, but it was what they used to call a boy and girl act.
Yeah.
The girl sat on a bench, and the fellow would try to make her. Flirt with her.
Flirt with her.
Flirt with her. F-L-I-R-T.
Flirt.
So he came up to her, and he says, "You're a very attractive broad." And he said, "It's a nice day, isn't it?" She says, "It was." And they were canceled after the first performance at the Hammerstein's Victoria because he said broad, and that word was not used in those days to refer to a woman.
Too racy?
Yes, it was. And now when you see people walking around naked in the audience and on the stage,
I know.
It's a whole different kind of a world I've moved in, and I don't belong in this world, really. I'm an incongruity. I don't belong in this thing.
Well, you went to Hair the other night, I know. You finally
I saw the first half of it. Because Tommy Smothers insisted on me going there. But either I didn't understand it, but either that or I found it too vulgar. I'm not interested in seeing naked people on the stage.
No?
Because I can go back to my hotel on the fourth floor. I don't think there's anything sexy about a naked person on the stage. I think women are sexy when they got their clothes on.
You're right about that.
And if later they take them off, then you've triumphed. You know, somebody once said, it's what you don't see that you're interested in. And this is true.
Speaking of ladies...
You go to the beach and you see... Speaking of ladies, there isn't one in the whole audience. Except those two in the front row.
I've always wanted to ask you if...
I've had my eye on those two for a long time.
The two in the front row?
Yeah.
Well, we'll have them wrapped for you.
Married, huh? Yeah. Take them to the party.
Did Margaret Dumont find you funny? She played the, as everybody knows, the dowager
lady. No, she never understood anything I did on the stage.
Is that so?
She didn't really. She thought I was serious.
No
I remember
kidding.
we had a line in Duck Soup, which was one of my favorite lines. And there was a war at the finish of Duck Soup. I'm sure some of the people out here have seen the picture.
It was just on TV.
If you applaud, you only waste time that I could use talking to you. So keep quiet. Just laugh hideously. At any rate, we had a big shell come through a window. And I rushed over to the window and I pulled down the shade. And her name was Otis, my name was Otis Driftwood in this picture. And she says, "Otis, what are you doing there?" I says, "I'm fighting for your honor, which is more than you ever did." At the end of the scene, she came over to me. She says, "What does that mean?" I says, "If you don't know what it means, I can't explain it to you. I'll show you how peculiar the audience and the morals were in those days, the morality of America." There was a scene in Night at the Opera where I'm walking up a gangplank onto the ship, and I have two suitcases in my hand. And she's in back of me, also walking up. And as we walked up, I said to her, she said to me, "Otis, have you got everything?" And I says, "Well, I've never had any complaints yet." You know, in 37 states, that was cut out by the census. This is true.
And she never understood that one either?
She never understood anything. A lot of people thought we were married, you know.
She did?
Yes, she was in so many pictures. The
Yes,
last show I did with her was the Hollywood Palace. And she was waiting, sitting at the stage door, as though she, at that time, was still a great star. It was kind of sad. She had a bouquet of roses in her hand, which I think she had bought herself and had delivered to her. And 2 days later, she died. And the last show she did was with me on the Hollywood Palace.
She died between tape and air, I believe, as they say. I think she died before it was on the air, didn't she?
Oh, yes, yeah. I thought you were describing something and you said between the tape and the hair. I didn't know what you were referring to.
You thought of the tape that holds a wig on or something like that. No, the tape in the...
No, but this isn't that... You know, if you read that in a story, you wouldn't believe it.
I know, it's...
that a woman who had been in 7 or 8 pictures of ours and was close to us on the stage and all over, and still never understood what I was talking about. And that was her charm, I think, that she was deadly serious all the time.